405. This is Business Unusual. I'm Lindy Sarame, in for my colleague Ayabong Atawe. And of course, it's Mama I Made It Friday. And today we'll be speaking to water technology company Aqua Air Africa, which recently launched an atmospheric water generating plant. But first, let's take a look at your top business stories making headlines today. Taste Holdings, which is shifting its focus away from fast foods towards luxury goods, say its group's revenue during 6 months to end August fell 10% to 421 million rands, with revenue in its food division falling 18%. Well, to discuss the day's top business stories, I'm joined in studio by Jimmy Moyaha, market analyst at AxiTrader. A very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Lindy.
I mean, Taste, was this actually expected, considering all the restructuring that's taking place at the company?
I think a part of it was. I think if you remember when they were sold off Starbucks a couple of months ago, they also announced that they were looking to get rid of their entire food division. The food division in terms of performance, like you said, the revenue from the food side declined by about 18%, whereas on the luxury goods side it only declined about 2%. So I think this was quite expected that the results would reflect that.
And I mean, we saw them sell off Maxis, we saw them sell off Fish and Chips Co. at ridiculous prices, really underneath the purchase price. We saw them sell off Starbucks as well, which was at a giveaway price. Does this not send a message then to investors?
Well, I mean, from their side, they've also announced that they're looking to sell off Domino's Pizza, which from their side. The food division made up about 48% of the revenue in this last 6 months, but it did account for about 65% of the operating costs. So it's making less revenue than the luxury division, but also it's costing more than the luxury division to maintain. So from an investor's perspective, I mean, if they then restructure this and they finalize the restructuring in some parts, from an investor's perspective, you can hope to see that their focus on the luxury department might see them increase their luxury division going forward.
Sure. And I mean, Jimmy, we must be honest, we saw the CEO stepping down last week. Does this not mean there's deeper issues at Taste?
Well, I mean, that could be for a number of reasons that the CEO stepped down. I mean, if you look at what they announced and what came out in the results, in the six-month results, is that there's a lot of things that they'd concluded in this time frame, that being one of them. Another one was they had to restructure some of their outsourcing some of their supply chain services within the group as well. And another thing was, from the accounting's perspective, they had to adjust some of their accounting policies and how they account for things. So I think the CEO stepping down was just an element of a large part of what Taste has just been doing as a whole over the last 6 months.
Sure. Are they in debt spiral?
Not necessarily, not at the moment. If you look at the plans that they've got in place, if you look at the fact that they did have a bit of a negative 6 months, they still had slightly positive cash flows if you look at their cash flows in the interim. And if you look at the net effect that the accounting policies had on the actual income statement, it only decreased or increased their income expenses by about 1.5 million rand overall. So they switched between two accounting policies effectively, and that's what sort of saw that increase there. Sure. But overall, the company is still okay at the moment.
I mean, you've been pretty optimistic as we're speaking about Taste, and they're saying that profitability will only probably return in the next 3 years. Is that even realistic?
Well, it is possible. I mean, if you look at what they're doing in terms of their restructuring and how they want to now focus and refocus their businesses, they cited that a lot of what happened with the food industry and all of that was increased costs of production from the food side of things, the climate within South Africa as well, lower consumer spending and that sort of thing. So people effectively were eating out less and that sort of thing, and that sort of took a toll on its revenue side of things. Sure. But also they made it known that a lot of their expenditure came from that, from running those businesses, from running those outlets. If you look at what they've got on their luxury division side, they've still got about 54 outlets on that side. So they've still got quite a bit that they can refocus on and retask themselves to. And if you look at the focus, their focus is mainly fine jewelry. Yes. If they go into the jewelry sector, if they go into sectors that are around that, you could probably see them come out with slightly better results. But I mean, they're going for a 3-year window from their side, I suppose, just because the sale of jewelry is not as always as frequent as the sale of fast food,
I mean, that was my next question then. The sale of jewelry, or that, industry, especially in South Africa, how are we performing? Yesterday we had, another economist here saying, well, when you look at the mines and the production of diamonds, a lot of South Africans are not buying diamonds for, engagements as they were the years before, which just points to the fact that millennials are just not getting married at the rate that they were before. So how's our jewelry industry doing?
Well, I mean, if you look at the minerals that we have, we're quite rich in minerals. From the mining side of things, I think that lends itself to being able to export more. So yes, we're not consuming as much of it locally, but we're then still able to export that to international markets. I mean, if you look, you'll see that we've got a lot of our exports go off to China. A lot of them go off to Europe as well. So from an export perspective, the minerals and the resources that we do have will go that way. From a local jewelry production perspective as well, I mean, we could probably look to do that sort of thing. Yes, the demand for that has decreased locally. Yes, the consumption of that by our end consumer has decreased. But I mean, that could be also attributed to the fact that our consumer spending has decreased as a whole. So as a country, our CPI has gone down. So that would naturally lend itself to lower spending.
And I mean, we see, especially with companies that are troubled, how, the CEO's head is the first one to be chopped off when, there's issues at a company. We've seen CEOs being shuffled, leaving, coming back to try and resolve the issues. Do you think in this case, if Taste appoints a new CEO, they'd be able to pull them out of the current problems, or do you think it's deeper than that?
Well, I think it'll definitely depend on how the restructuring that they've just finalized, how that impacts the business going into the last 6 months. So yes, the introduction of a new CEO, the change of leadership, any change of leadership in an organization will always lend itself to a bit of instability, a bit of concern from an investor's side, and depending on who they appoint and the reasons behind why they appoint that person. I mean, if you look at our parastatal side of things, when we recently appointed the new Eskom CEO, there were some concerns around that and the plans there as well. So I mean, any change of leadership will lend itself to that. But if you look at Taste's plans and what they've managed to accomplish in the last 6 months in terms of the restructuring, I'd like to think that whatever they do in the coming 6 months would then be as part of a greater plan to then say, we're not just looking at this financial year. Yes, this financial year might not be great for us, but we're looking to turn around the business as a whole on a larger scale.
Absolutely. Well, let's continue with discussions on the day's top business stories. Let's take a quick ad break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.